So we're going to be entering into a session on the federal budget as a moral document. And the reason for this, and this was kind of like a last minute insert, mainly because I got the registration and I looked at the things that are happening. I think there was a question that you all had to answer, and some of it hinted on, or not, it's okay if you did it, was kind of what's happening in what are some issues happening in your community, and how our churches, your church and community trying to address it. And there were many real poverty as one of the issues. And so there are a few things that are coming up right now regarding legislation that I think is really going to be impacting a lot of low-income families. And so I wanted to kind of bring that up to with you all. And so we're going to, the federal budget, I only know one person that I work with, John Hill, who is our interim general secretary, and he's the only one that I know that gets really, really excited about the federal budget, because it's a beast of a thing to understand. And there are times, and I've heard him talk about it many, many times, and I still have to go back and kind of be like, okay, remind myself what all this is. And so I hopefully made it digestible for us while we're also digesting lunch. So 2 quotes. The first one is from Matthew chapter 6, verse 21. For where your treasure is, there your heart will be also. And then the one underneath, don't tell me what you value, show me your budget and I'll tell you what you value. Do you guys know who said that? President Biden said that as he was in conversations regarding the budget. Now, here's a question so what does the US government spend money on? And just shout them out and I'll write them in.
Defense.
Defense, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Infrastructure, a little.
I put Social Security just to kind of have a marker in our box, but there's a lot more.
Scientific research, though a lot of that's under defense as well.
Agricultural support.
What's it, CDC and all that good stuff?
Law enforcement.
So I guess cybersecurity would fall under that law enforcement. Okay.
Intelligence.
Yeah, thank you.
Security, yeah.
Education. We have the Health and Education Department.
Foreign aid.
National parks, national monuments.
Subsidies.
There's an agency called Indian Affairs, so.
There's HUD, FBI, if you're going to put the CIA down there. Homeland Security.
I guess we spend money on people that are coming, what are they called, immigrants? People that are coming. Immigration.
Do we put down Medicare and Medicaid?
Do they have anything to do with Veterans Affairs? I'm sure they do.
Yeah. SNAP.
The electric grid. I don't know how much that is.
Energy?
A lot of energy is probably the better way to put that. Yeah, thank you.
So there's a pretty good list. Let me show you. So here's another list that I just did like a brain dump. And so there's Social Security, Medicare, Medicaid, unemployment, transportation, military, education, energy, environment, HUD, Veterans Affairs, NASA, Department of Defense, Department of Justice, Homeland Security, Customs and Border Protection, Bureau of Prisons, IRS, Department of State, Agriculture, and there's a whole slew of the alphabet stew. Yeah. National Parks, Bureau of Indian Affairs, DEA, ICE, more of the alphabet stew. Think about what for you are your priorities and values, okay? We're gonna do a little bit more group pairing work right now, and I want you to create an ideal federal budget based on your values and priorities and beliefs. Now, you don't have to use like money amounts. We're not gonna touch that because that gets really wonky. So what we're gonna do is we're just gonna do it off of percentages. So imagine 100% as the full amount, And from that, what percentage would you give to all the different things that we listed? And so, and you can just do like the top 5, just so that, it makes it a little bit more manageable. But again, here is the list of some of the ways that the money is spent. So I'll give you guys about like 10 minutes or so to work on this list, and then we'll share it together. As this group is continuing to discuss and figure things out over here, how about you guys?
The most amount of any other category in education, so that then our kids could be smart enough to solve all the other problems that we didn't have enough money to solve. So we put 35% in education.
Nice.
How much?
35.
Okay.
And what are the other categories?
We also felt like agriculture, because we have to eat, and we felt like defense was still important, even though if we were in an ideal country, we wouldn't have to worry about defending ourselves against other people if we were in the kingdom. And then,
Florida, that's what we call it.
so we also put Medicare, Medicaid, SNAP, unemployment, we kind of lump those all into one category. And then we also recognize we still have to have the national debt on there. And that's the end of our categories.
What percentage did you give to agriculture, defense, and Medicare, Medicaid?
12, agriculture. Defense, we're giving them 5. Social Security, we did 10. If I didn't say Social Security, I'm sorry. And then 30 to Medicare. SNAP, unemployment, like I said, we categorized those all together. Give those 30%.
We added universal health care.
Oh, I like that.
We developed it ourselves.
If that had been an option, we would have put that in there, definitely.
Okay, how about this group over here?
We had more than 5, so you just had to bear with us for a second. We did transportation at 22, Medicare and Medicaid at 18, and then HUD, Social Security, energy, environment, agriculture, and education all at 10, because we thought those were all very important. And then we dropped the defense budget down to 4 to pay for it all. And of course, 8% on the debt.
Awesome. Okay. Hi.
Well, we did lump, like, Social Security, Medicare, Medicaid, universal health care, all into one and called it 40%. That much we agreed upon. We did put defense at 10%. It was all the things in between that we were having trouble deciding priorities and what was important.
Okay.
But we had education, transportation, and unemployment listed as well. We did not have agriculture, but we probably should have. We did not finish our project.
So in this group, the top 3 priorities, education, transportation, and entitlement programs, is basically what came out of this conversation. Let's just hold that in the back burner of our minds for now. So these are the types of federal spending, and we'll go into it a little bit more. But as of now, I want you to look at how there's 63% of mandatory spending, and we'll talk more about this. There's discretionary spending of 30%, and then there is that 8% interest that I caused you guys about. Now, what is mandatory spending? This is the part that we really don't hear too much about on the news because it's on autopilot. This is not what Congress is arguing about and things like that, and people are screaming at each other about. There's some of the examples of mandatory spending there. Social Security is there, Medicare, SNAP, TANF, Veterans, International Affairs, Military, Transportation, Education, Energy, and Environment. These are things that are basically on autopilot, and as long as there is legislation attached to them, they will just continue.
What is TANF?
Oh my gosh.
Temporary assistance.
Oh gosh.
Not funded.
Oh, and I can't recall, all of a sudden, it will come to me in a
Okay.
moment.
When it
I will
comes
let
to you, just share it with
Yes,
us.
yes. So this is mandatory spending. It's this is the stuff that always happens, autopilot. It actually expands and shrinks based on the economy. So remember, there was a COVID relief temporary assistance that was added on to what people were receiving when they were receiving, for those that were receiving SNAP benefits, right?
So it was not that stimulus, it was something other than that?
It was part of the temporary emergency fund, and that came out of the mandatory spending. So that was actually able to, like, it didn't have a limit. As long as you qualified, you received it. Now in Virginia, on Wednesday, I think that was the 1st, was the end of that additional supplement to SNAP for us. I'm not sure about Kentucky.
It was last June.
It was last June.
Last June?
Yeah, the General Assembly ended the state of emergency. Which
We
ended
gave up
the-
over $500 million.
Oh my goodness, I didn't know that.
Temporary assistance for needy families, TANF, yes.
Temporary assistance for needy families. Okay.
How long has temporary assistance for needy families
I
been
actually,
in existence?
I think it's been around for a while. It's same as in different form as but let me get back to you on it. I am going to tell you guys right now, I am not the expert in the federal budget, and if there's questions, I will ask John, who is, and I'm lucky that I get to work with people that love the federal budget. So, where was I?
COVID assistance in Virginia ended.
Yes, and so there's a bunch of people right now that all of a sudden are now without the food spending assistance that they had for the past 2 years at probably the worst time possible, especially because groceries cost so much these days. So this is mandatory spending. Now here is discretionary spending, and this is what you guys often hear about people arguing about and things like that. It has to be approved by Congress and the president every year. Usually Congress allocates about half of the discretionary budget, a little bit more than half, on defense. And the rest actually goes into the administration of all of these other agencies and programs like defense spending, Medicare, medical care for veterans, grant programs for education, low-income assistance programs, early childhood programs like Head Start, public housing and homeless programs, federal aid for public K-12 education, food assistance for women, infants, and children, job training and placement for unemployment. These are the categories that we often hear people arguing about where to put what and where to take out from what to put more into something else. This is the category. Now, this was back in 2021 because our government we don't really do things timely when it comes to the budget, and you're probably very aware of the fact that we've had government shutdowns, and now there's a conversation about other things happening. So I kind of went back to 2021 to kind of pull out the numbers from there. And at that point, this is the 4.8% was mandatory spending, 1.6 was discretionary, and then there was that 0.4 for interest. And the revenue comes in from basically when we pay taxes into it, right? That's the money that the government has to spend, was only at 4.0. We spent 6.8, right? Now that goes into, well, I'll go back to that. Here's the actual breakdown of how much we spent on what in 2021. So there's Social Security, that's where a lot of it goes to, $1.1 trillion into Social Security, Medicare, Medicaid, unemployment, paycheck protection programs, and then other programs like veterans benefits and things like that. And this is a mandatory. And here's the 2021 discretionary spending breakdown. 895 billion went to non-defense. So here you have food and agriculture, labor, science, international affairs, housing and community, veterans benefits, education. And then 752 billion went to defense. Something about the defense budget, we'll kind of get to it a little bit later. This has been rising every year since 2015. Like, it's been continuously rising. And it's interesting because defense experts are saying it doesn't need to go up. But for some reason, we continue to raise the budget for defense. Here's components of the federal spending. Again, you can see that 23%, majority of it goes to Social Security. So this is a breakdown of kind of percent-wise from 2021. And again, here's just, where is all of that money coming from? Payroll, individual income taxes, and corporate income taxes and other.
So that means, if you go back to that side, that means that individuals put in, what is that,
53.
85%?
50,
Yeah, but
right, if you added up the payroll, individual income.
because you get hit twice that way.
Yeah.
Wow.
So I mentioned that there's a calendar that we're all supposed to follow regarding the federal budget that we kind of suck at following. So winter, the president is supposed to release or send out his budget request to Congress by early February. I heard that it's coming out March 9th, which is next week. And then Congress, considers the president's budget. And then in the spring, Congress finalizes its budget resolution, and they should be done by April 15th. Has it ever been done by April 15th?
No, it has
really,
not.
no. And then in the summer begins consideration of individual appropriations, and then in the fall finalizes appropriations. When I mention appropriations, think about discretionary spending, what we discussed about all of those little programs and where everything goes. And then at that point, the president's already thinking about the following year. The following budget year, right? It's been a little bit interesting because in 2023, they couldn't make up their mind about the discretionary spending part of it. And so after many continuing resolutions, and continuing resolutions when Congress can't get their act together, and instead of going into default and whatever, they actually put a continuing resolution so that the government can continue to spend money until Congress is able to make a decision. That didn't happen, so what they ended up doing was they kind of put together a bunch of things, kind of like what you guys did, right? Instead, what they did, it's called an omnibus bill. And so they just clumped together the 12 appropriations and then passed it. And that was kind of how we are still able to function right now without the government shutting down. So a little bit of unpacking of terms here. So the deficit is the amount by which the government spending exceeds its income and borrows money to cover the shortfalls. Now, the government does interesting things when it borrows money. It borrows money from itself. It's odd in the way that you kind of, take money out of your one pant pocket and then put it into the other pant pocket is basically what it's doing. The other way that
Peter to pay Paul.
the other thing that the government does is we borrow money from other countries.
That's right.
And so one of the top that we borrow from China, right? And from I think it's Luxembourg is on the top 10, right? It's interesting, but we definitely do borrow money from other countries. So the debt is basically the accumulation of these budget deficits, right? Whatever is that shortfall is the debt adding every year, right? The debt ceiling is a limit on the amount of the national debt that can be issued by the U.S. Treasury. And that is determined by Congress. And that is what you're probably hearing about right now on the news. To be completely honest, the debt ceiling is a little bit arbitrary because Congress has been raising it many times. I think during the last administration, it was raised minimum twice. I think it was raised twice already. But right now, it's become more of a political thing than anything else. And so that's why we are now hearing the conversation regarding the debt ceiling. So here's the part about what's happening now. We are hearing a lot about discussions for the discretionary spending part, mainly because, and I'll go to this one. So we have a new Speaker of the House, McCart. And he basically said that one of the things that he agreed upon, right, to become speaker, was that the spending bill budget will go back to the 2022 levels. So let's look at that. In 2022, it was $1.51 trillion. In 2023, it's $1.65 trillion. 2024, he wants to take it back to the 2022, right? It would be it would be less than 8.9% less than the current budget right now. So people are a little bit worried because we don't really take money out of defense. We're really good about raising it, but we don't take money out of defense. What we end up doing is taking money out of other programs that are really needed, right? So array of public services that communities depend on, including public health, food safety, air traffic control operations. We've been hearing a lot about that recently, right, on the news.
Yeah,
about
they don't need
planes.
to cut that one.
Right. The administration of Medicare and Social Security, housing, and other assistance for low-income families, scientific and medical research. Right? I feel like after a pandemic, we should really be like thinking about how to, up that a little bit, right? All may have budget cuts. The other part that's happening right now, the other conversation, is regarding the Farm Bill. I'm sorry. So this has a lot of agricultural components to it, but it also has a lot of nutrition components to it, like SNAP, or formerly known as food stamps. And it has to be reauthorized every 5 years. And that is where we are now. Now, I'm going to pass this around. So in 2021, SNAP helped more than 41 million low-income people in the United States to afford nutritious and adequate diet. Now, who is eligible? Low-paid working families, low-income older adults, people with disabilities living on fixed incomes, individuals, and households with low income. 2/3 of SNAP participants are families with children, and 1/3 are households with older adults and people with disabilities. Now, the federal government pays for the full cost of SNAP benefits, but splits the cost of administering the program in the states which operate it. So here's a little bit of like a breakdown of the money-wise. In 2021, the federal government spent $105 billion, or 94% of that, directly to households to purchase food. 94%. 5% went to the federal share of covering administrative costs. Less than 1% went to federal administrative costs, and 5% went to the share of the state administrative cost. Now, 60% or $63 billion was the regular SNAP. The rest, 42, was what I mentioned earlier regarding the emergency allotment from COVID-19. This is what it looks like in Kentucky, and I passed that around. This is from the back side of it, I think. In 2022, 541,600 Kentucky residents, or 12% of the state population, 1 in 8, received SNAP benefits. Which is higher than the national here that we were seeing regarding Kentucky and nationally who is receiving SNAP. So you might be wondering exactly then how much are people receiving? So in 2021, SNAP participants received and this is on average, $127 a month, or $4.16 a day for one person. $4.16 a day. Now, with the emergency allotment, they were able to receive $92 per month more, or $3.01 a day, which added to $219 per month, or $7.17 a day. Now, Kentucky average in 2023, SNAP participants receive $177 a month, or $5.83 a day. And now we know that the emergency allotment ended last year. And so that is it, $177 a month to eat, to get food
This per person or per family?
per person.
Okay. And food went up, that's right.
I feel like all of us, we grocery shop, right? Just think about what you can get for $177 a month
Beans.
now, right?
That's one shopping trip.
I was gonna say, that's about a week.
Yeah.
You're lucky if that's a shopping trip.
Oh, yeah.
Right? Or even $5.83 a day, right? Think about the fact that, oftentimes what we put into our bodies also determine our health,
Yes.
right? So if people are buying things that are cheaper, that is definitely all processed, there's gonna be health,
Disparities, yeah.
right?
And fresh fruits and vegetables just kind of go out the window.
Yeah, think about those.
Yeah, definitely.
Cans and bags mostly at that point.
So here's the other thing that that's happening. So this is the People Over Pentagon Act, or HR 1134. One of the things that, as I mentioned, defense has always been going up, right? And People Over Pentagon Act is trying to lower the Pentagon budget. And this one is to lower it by $100 billion. Now, people are probably wondering, well, like, oh my goodness, like, don't we need to increase, defense budget? Especially with what's happening right now with Ukraine and Russia and all of that that's happening, right? There's always some kind of unrest that's happening globally, right? The interesting thing about how the budget gets used is that they did a study, and what they realized was that more than 50% of the money actually goes to for-profit defense corporations. It goes into just paying for more weapons. Right? It doesn't go into salary. It doesn't go into military operations. It doesn't go into supporting our veterans. It goes into building more weapons. And as I mentioned earlier, our defense experts are saying we don't need all this money. Okay. And I was talking to a colleague of mine who works on this issue, and she shared with me, she's like, think about it this way. The more weapons we have, the more reasons we will have to use them.
Is this bill stuck in a committee somewhere?
So right now, people are being asked to, and I will actually, there's gonna be a QR code, so you guys can actually take a picture of it and submit a letter in a little bit. This is also more information on the People Over Pentagon Act. The fact that the US spends more on its military than the next 9 countries combined.
Most of whom are our allies.
For what?
Allies.
So you have, the next country is China, and it's like way less than half of what we spend right now on it. And here it says, if we were to cut $100 billion in the Pentagon budget, we can cover Medicare for 7 million veterans. Okay? We can hire 1 million elementary school teachers. This actually would be really, like my kids are in elementary school, and when school started this year, we got an email saying, we don't have all the teachers, all the classrooms don't have teachers right now. And we're just like, okay, so are our kids gonna be going into empty classrooms with no teachers? Like, what's going on? This is, and I know this is happening all across the nation.
Mm-hmm.
Power every US household with solar energy.
So could we do all three of those things, or we could do one or two, or?
You know what, I think, that's a good question. I didn't ask when I was speaking with Holly, but I can definitely get back to you on it.
Okay.
So, here are some congressional asks when considering the federal budget, because this is going to be in conversations. Secure social safety nets. Fund the Farm Bill, specifically SNAP. Do not reduce funding for social safety nets. We have to raise the debt ceiling. That was the other thing that I think I left out. The debt ceiling, if we go into default, that basically means that we are not fulfilling our obligation. We already said that we would pay for X, Y, and Z. If we go into default, we're basically ordering a meal at a restaurant, receiving the check, not paying for it, and walking out. Is basically what it is. And that actually would cause a lot of issues. Like people that depend on Social Security are not going to get it on time. It's going to impact water and food assistance. It's going to impact transportation. It's going to be impacting a lot of different things.
Does your colleague ever address the fact that we can repeal the 100-year-old legislation that created the debt ceiling, but why we don't?
No, and I will ask John about that. And I
Okay.
can bring that up.
Okay.
That's a question, yeah. So I put a QR code over there, which will direct you to, if you take a picture of it with your camera, it will take you directly to our website. And you could actually write your name, and it will, the letter will actually be sent to your representative.
It's preloaded?
It's all ready for you guys to do that today, like now.
Yeah.
Okay?
And it also helps if you have any personal feelings, if you can put those in like at the very beginning and the end.
Yeah.
They are more likely to pay attention to things that aren't completely a form letter.
Yeah. We'll talk a little bit more about writing and things like that after break. So that's like a very quick kind of thing on the federal budget and what's the discussion right now that's happening. I brought a couple of things for you. These are faith and fact cards in the United States. And these are designed to kind of state, what does the Bible say about this issue? What does the United Methodist Church say about this issue? And then the back, it says, what are some facts and what can you do about this issue? And so these are on hunger and poverty. Now I brought another one here, and this one is specifically on budget and tax.